morning, everyone. This is Kathleen Ball. I'm back to talk to you about synchronicities this morning. The synchronicities that were sort of woven through my entire last 34 years, actually. It started with a near-death experience on March 11th of 1990, actually late in the evening of March 10th. And it came out of this near-death experience on the morning of March 11th, a completely changed person. I have to say that I was 100% completely changed. Instead of, the feelings of, victimization and just, feeling that the world was a terrible place and that I was never going to be able to get ahead and all these sorts of, depressing thoughts that had transpired for several years leading up to this near-death experience. And March 11th, all of that was erased after the experience that I had. And I did not have a typical near-death experience. I did not try to commit suicide. That was not how it happened. What I did actually was I laid down after having written out my last will and testament. And I firmly believed that suicide was a terrible thing, that you just was not something that it was acceptable by God. And so instead, what I did is I asked God to take my life. And what happened next was I lost consciousness. I felt as if I was being lifted from my body. My heart stopped. I stopped breathing. And I was in this state for, I don't know how long, actually. It was sometime in the wee hours of March 10th after midnight. And so I don't really know what happened, except for the fact that I lost consciousness, I stopped breathing, and my heart stopped. During the experience, I was in a state that I believe today was a multidimensional experience of being in the same dimension with angels and with God, with a godly presence that was directing what was happening and what I was experiencing, and allowing me to see, what had transpired in my life up to that point, and take a look at myself, and also to sort of ruminate on what I had accomplished up to date in my life. And what I saw was a life that was very filled with a lot of pain, a lot of tragedy, and not much accomplishment. So during the course of this whole experience, I was shown what I believe to be the future of mankind at some point on a spiritual level, though it was difficult to explain because it wasn't a physical experience. I did not see physical beings. They were very ethereal. I saw plants and trees and people, but I saw their spiritual essence, nothing physical. And I could feel the presence of angelic forms. I felt very close to God. I felt godly presence permeated through my entire being, my spiritual being, because obviously my physical body was not there. I was given choices. I was told that I could stay in that state and essentially proceed with my physical death, or that I could return. If I chose to stay there, I would eventually have to be reborn and relive not the exact same life, but something very similar with all its difficulties, and that those were all for the purpose of me building strength and resilience. So, I didn't want to do that again. And I was really excited about what I saw as a potential future of mankind in that spiritual experience, in that near death. And so I decided to come back. I decided to return to the land of the living and do my part to participate in bringing about this future, spiritual future for mankind. And after, after that near death, I began researching and reading. I read the Bible over 400 times. I was really interested in the Old Testament, and Revelations were my two favorite parts of the Bible. I researched esoteric belief systems, the Dead Sea Scrolls, the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the Nag Hammadi, Gnostic Gospels. I mean, I read everything I could get my hands on. I researched spiritual belief systems throughout the planet. And eventually, all this led to a PhD in metaphysical sciences. After many, many years of research. At the time that my house burned down in 2015, after discovering the Templar Cave in Brazil, I had over 5,000 books in my library, all of which I had read. These were all my research materials, and they consisted of books on biology, on quantum physics, nuclear physics, art, religions of the world, all religions of the world, all spiritual belief systems, indigenous cultures, rock art, you name it. I had treatises on everything. I had articles on everything that I could get my hands on. I felt as if that this information was being sort of downloaded for future purposes, and I wasn't sure what those purposes were, but I was obsessed with learning, knowledge, wisdom. I also investigated, I had investigated as a child many churches, and just sort of withdrew from, from the typical church scenario of, worshiping God. I did, however, after this experience, research a few more churches and became members of various churches, and never finding what I was looking for. I just wasn't finding it. I didn't start finding it until I started going within, until I started really looking at who I was and just examining the interior of my spiritual nature. And that's when the real revelations began. I was simultaneously at that time studying the Tao, which was interesting because I still sort of follow that belief system sort of loosely. It's a big part of what I refer to. And I also was very involved in Hindu spiritual studies belief system at that time, and Kabbalah. I had 35 years of research into Kabbalah and Kabbalah studies, the Tree of Life, etc. So that background, I went into teaching. I became an art professor, and I was an art professor for many, many years prior to finding this Templar Cave in Brazil. I would teach during the winter session and one summer session, and then I would go out on my research expeditions to Egypt, to India, to all these different places, South America, Machu Picchu, going to all these ancient sites and getting firsthand knowledge. I after the near-death experience, I have sort of a multidimensional experience of reality. I'm capable of sensing the other dimensional realities. And so when I go to these places, I have oftentimes past life experiences, triggers of things that may have happened in those areas. And fast forward into Egypt, I had all 3 trips so far into Egypt, I've had past life experiences. In South America, when I went into Peru, I had past life experiences. Going into France, I had multiple past life experiences, and had a very strong history and background of study in Leonardo da Vinci, which eventually led me into this research with the Templars and esoteric societies, secret societies, specifically. Ultimately, this foundation of knowledge and experience, travels, gathering of this information, was accompanied by synchronicities that we had sort of a weave through everything. Many of the Templars and people that I've come into contact with has called this whole experience my destiny, which I firmly believe. I believe that this is my destiny. Things that have happened were just unexplainable. They were not coincidental. I happened to be at the right place, at the right time, to give someone $8.67 or whatever it was that saved this person's life. He was struggling getting out of this horrible situation in San Francisco, and I happened by, and I was directed to give this man this money. It turned out it was the exact amount that he needed for a BART ticket to get home to his mother and get into a recovery program. Stuff like that, just being at the right place, the right time on a bus in Calgary, in Canada, being able to say certain words to someone that needed those words at that moment. Being met by shamans in Peru and in Brazil, in Valparaiso. I was, happened by a health food store, and a shaman had been waiting for me. He tapped me on the shoulder and told me he was waiting for me. I was in France, in Dome, France, and I was given the keys to the dungeon where the Templars were held in France. I wasn't there for that purpose at all. I was there for an art exhibit and to see some underground grotto that had some pictographs in it. And as I'm coming up, this man just sort of mysteriously, came up to me and asked me if I wanted to see where the Templars were held in 1307 to 1314 before they were murdered, in this dungeon that happened to be in that location. And I'm given the keys, and he says, and bring them back when you're done. Things like this. Meeting with a nun in Marseille who opened the doors to the cathedral there and took one look at me and told me that she had been waiting for me since college, that she had learned English in college so that when I came, she could speak with me. And she sent me on a spiritual mission up into St. Baume, which is where the resting place of Mary Magdalene was. And I was directed to, not by her, but again by spirit, to conduct a spiritual cleansing of that space. So, and the nun had told me, please promise you will do what you're directed to do. Now that there's no explanation that I know of for any of these so-called coincidences. They were synchronicities that have just weaved through my life. And ultimately they led me to the cave in Brazil. The synchronicities of that particular day prior to the discovery of the cave, I was heading up there with a girlfriend. She had to rent the car because I forgot my driver's license. That was the first synchronicity. She didn't know how to drive a car with a clutch. That's what they gave us. She blew out 2 clutches, causing us a huge delay in getting to where we thought we were wanting to go. Well, that ended up, we had to go into Valparaiso, which was high paradise in English, and also where I ended up ultimately finding the Templar cave in Brazil. There were no accidents to those synchronicities that led to that event. Just none. I mean, there was nothing explainable. So, I get really excited about this. These synchronicities are sort of proof to me that I'm on the right path. And when these synchronicities are happening, I know that I need to continue with what I'm doing. And so, you know, later on, after discovering the cave and my home burning down when I got home, 9 days after I got home, September 11th of 2015, I took a year and I had to decide, and I had to step away from my job teaching at the college, which I loved, and I had moved into this as a full-time endeavor and career. And so I made that choice. And, you know, I have not looked back. I have continued to do what's in front of me and what I've been directed to do. Later, after finding the cave in Brazil, I was directed to an interview with the Amazon people. I couldn't go see them in Valparaiso because of the COVID virus that was happening at that time. So instead, they invited me into their village, which I ended up staying with them, with my translator and my photographer and my guide for quite some time. And during that experience, I was invited into an ayahuasca ceremony, and I had a very profound physical medical healing where I am no longer taking anti-rejection meds for a liver transplant that I had in 2015. So, you know, these synchronicities have been not only for the betterment of my physical body, but also my spiritual evolution and my message to the world. I think ultimately is what the goal is, to be able to articulate and talk to the world about what these experiences are, and that anybody can get out, anybody can have these experiences just by venturing out and pursuing your own Grail quest. And that's basically what I'm just here to talk about, is that Grail quest. And I lead tours into Portugal, into Egypt. I'll be taking people back into Brazil and Peru next year. But my upcoming tour in Portugal is coming up very quickly. So if you want to sign up for that, I'll be showing you a lot of the places that I've recently discovered by Synchronicity that are very important Templar sites, and no other researchers know about these. And you can't have these experiences with any other tour guide. So if you want to, get involved in that, you can go to www.templarinbrazil.com and sign up for that tour, or later for the Egypt tour that will take place in February 2025. So I hope you enjoyed today's segment. If so, please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next episode.